What an extraordinary week it has been in the history of Nottingham Forest Football Club. Wembley, promotion to the Premier League, and then that fabulous celebration in the Old Market Square as well. One man who's been at the heart of it, Colin Fray, commentating at Wembley and then hosting the ceremony on the balcony of the Council House as well. His story of an extraordinary week next. Colin, fantastic to see you. It strikes me you've not had a bad week.
Yeah, it's been all right.
What was the best bit? I want to ask you, what was the best bit?
Wow. There's so many to choose from, to be honest. The balcony scenes were special. Joe letting me have the cup to lift up was special. But I just think, I think that, as you know, I hadn't commentated at Wembley before on football. And the commentary position, which you might remember from the George Groves fight, and when, you know, all those times you've been to Wembley before, has this big overhang, doesn't it, from the level above? So it kind of blocks out most of the top tier. And I think walking down some steps, the side of the press box, to be able to see the whole of Wembley and seeing that red wall of 3 tiers worth of Forest fans, 37,000, about sort of quarter of an hour before kickoff, was just breathtaking. Because when you go into Wembley, however many times you've been to Wembley, I think it's fair to say that it just takes your breath away, the size of it, and how high, just how far up it goes. It just goes up forever and ever and ever. And when it's full, it was just that sea of Forest fans. It just took your breath away. Then they started singing Mull of Kintyre. And it was just everything I'd wanted and more. So I think probably that moment was the best bit. The first time you sort of walk down and you see Wembley full was, as I say, utterly breathtaking. Fantastic memories.
And when you look back on it now, and it's easy to say now with hindsight, but it felt all along somehow, you know, Forest have had a way of being destined to go out of the playoffs. At some point, they've found a way to go out of the playoffs. This time it seemed the opposite, that they were destined to get through to Wembley and then go on and get promotion to the Premier League. It's weird how it's felt completely the opposite this time.
It's felt different. The thing is, it's felt different. I can't remember if we spoke about this last week, but just since Steve Cooper's come in, the club's been different. Everything's been different about it. And it's so together, and the playoffs are a classic example, really. You know, the second leg against Sheffield United, they would have capitulated in the past, but they're made of stronger stuff now. It was a terrific story. It's been a terrific story. And even if they hadn't got through and ended up getting promotion, it would have been a magnificent story anyway, the way that Steve Cooper's turned them around and got them up the table. And I'm sure they would have been, admittedly with a vastly different team probably, but I'm sure they would have again been challenging next season because of the way Steve Cooper works. But the story sort of needed that ending to make it a real fairy tale, and I think that's what it is. It's just, I keep hearing the phrase "miracle 2," the second miracle on Trent's side. You're nowhere near that level yet, because there's things to do. You've got to win the league in your first season up, and then win the European Cup a couple of times. So we'll see. But step one has been completed, and to say where they came from, it's an extraordinary story. I've got to be honest, I never felt it was inevitable. I wish I'd been able to feel it was inevitable.
Right. Okay.
I think every Forest fan, after 20 odd years of just, as you say, being accustomed to finding a way to mess it up somehow, I just think everybody was waiting for it to finish. And in saying that, I don't think anybody would have thought it would have been messed up. I don't think anybody would have thought it would have been a failure, because of where they've come from, because of how they're playing, because of the togetherness. The number of things I saw on social media and comments I've heard of people saying, look, whatever happens, it's been great, and let's just go on and do it again next season. If the worst happens, let's just go and do it again. So I kind of think that maybe a lot of the supporters were thinking, yeah, maybe it's not going to be, maybe it can't be. It's just disbelief, I suppose. It's disbelief because it's Forest. It doesn't happen to Forest.
Steeling yourself against the worst.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of thing. It's just like, well, something's going to go wrong somewhere along the line, but it hasn't. And VAR is brilliant, and we all love it.
I was going to say, more than that, things that probably should have gone against Forest haven't even gone against Forest this time.
Yeah, exactly. And just, that doesn't, I mean, I got to be honest, having seen, let's be fair. Forest have had some shocking decisions go against them this season. Some real bad decisions, stonewall penalties that have been really obvious. And Bournemouth is the prize example, where the ref has even gone in afterwards and said, look, I'm really sorry, I made a mistake. It was a penalty.
Yeah.
And you just, and there is that old phrase, isn't there, that things even themselves up over the course of a season. We reckon it was about a dozen times during this season where Forest have either had a penalty that looks absolutely stonewall and then was proved to be on the video afterwards not given, or a good goal disallowed. And when that happens a dozen times in the season, you kind of think it's actually going against you a little bit. So as soon as they announced that VAR was going to be in the final, my initial thought, the old pessimism coming back in was, well, we're going to get done by VAR, aren't we? At some point, VAR is either going to rule a Forest goal out, or it's going to give a penalty or something like that. We're going to get done by VAR, because that's the sort of season it's been in terms of decisions. We've been kind of saying, need VAR all season because of these horrible decisions that have been going against Forest. So I was convinced that at some point VAR would go against Forest on Sunday, but then they decided not to use it.
Yes, bizarre. Brilliant, but bizarre. I would imagine the Huddersfield version of this is probably a bit different to. Had it been the other way round, my goodness, can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Huddersfield fans will be furious about it, absolutely furious about it. But what can you do? Forest have been furious about it. Forest were furious about it at Bournemouth. But what can you do? There's nothing you can do. I genuinely still now, I've got to be honest, I don't know why they didn't refer the second penalty to VAR. I can see why the first penalty wasn't overturned, because I don't think it was clear and obvious. And I don't think, therefore the VAR official wouldn't overturn the on-field decision.
Umpire's call, effectively.
Umpire's call in cricket. It's got to be clear and obvious to be overturned. If you're going to change the decision, it's got to be clear and obvious. I don't think it was, because I think a load of people have looked at that over and over again from angle after angle after angle and have still gone, don't really know. Second one, I just am amazed they didn't even look at. I am absolutely staggered that they didn't even look at it. But league.
Yes. So I'm just going to, next time we chat, maybe midway through next season, and you moan about VAR, I'm just going to remind you of the Huddersfield game. All right, just so we're clear. What were your feelings on the final whistle, if you can remember them? Or, I mean, I know what you're like. You would be concentrating completely on doing the job as best as you could. But do you remember thinking, when was the moment it kind of sunk in?
It was the moment it sunk in was, and I could see it was happening with the players as well, was when, I can't remember if I'm honest, I think it might have been Sorba Thomas. No, was it Harry Toffolo? Huddersfield player, they had a throw. Huddersfield player then got the ball and tried to cross it and sliced it out of play for a goal kick from the
stoppage time.
Yeah, deep into stoppage time.
Yeah, I remember that bit as well. It's funny.
And at that point, I thought, oh, it's a goal kick to Forest. They'd obviously gone through all the drama with Brice Samba late on, and then Ethan Horvath coming on. So Ethan Horvath's got a goal kick. But as soon as that was sliced out of play, I thought, he's going to blow. He's going to blow now as soon as this goal kick is taken. So it's done. And then you could see Brennan Johnson and might have been Jed Spence. But they went and just embraced. This was while they were shaping up for the goal kick, because they knew Ryan Yates clenched both his fists. And he's sort of said since that he asked the ref, is that it? The ref said, yeah, it's done. So they kind of knew, and as soon as that ball went out for a goal kick, that was the moment when I thought they're actually going to do this. This is actually going to happen. Get ready. Don't get these next words wrong.
Did that thought go through your mind?
Yes, absolutely.
And what did you say? Forgive me, I've not heard it. What did you say?
Well, I don't think many people have, because you couldn't hear it, basically, because it was so loud. But I said, Forest are Premier League, Nottingham Forest are Premier League, because that's just, I thought that summed it up. I thought that was, they were the right words at the right time. And then it was just bedlam, absolute bedlam. You asked me what some of the favourite bits were earlier, and to see and hear and actually feel the celebrations afterwards, because it was that kind of loud that went right through your chest,
right?
And made your ears pulse, made your eardrums pulse. It was just such a noise, extraordinary noise, and for a lengthy period of time as well. The celebrations just went on and on and on. I'm not sure they've finished yet, actually, but I mean, just at Wembley itself, extraordinary. And I think soon after in the commentary, I used the phrase "explosion of joy," which is just, I mean, it just was. You could just see 23 years just being blown away by everybody. By those who were old enough to remember what it was like before, by a new generation, anybody under the age of 23 who was suddenly thinking, Forest are in the Premier League. And sort of things from then on, little bits and pieces sort of slowly dawn on you. Spoke to Joe Worrell afterwards in the mix zone, and he said, "It couldn't be on Match of the Day." And it's things like that are suddenly, that are just, all Forest have had for Match of the Day in the last 23 years is the odd FA Cup tie, where they might have featured. Obviously got a lot of coverage this year for the FA Cup run, but that's it. And now they're going to be every week. And this is where you start to think, yeah, that's what it means. Their every move is now going to be analysed, not just by people like us at a local level, but by everybody. They are massively in the spotlight now. Every time they play football, everybody's going to be watching. All the cameras are going to be watching. Every pundit's going to have their say. They're going to be analysed on national television week in, week out. And, that's unheard of for Forest for 23 years.
So what happens this summer? Are they, I'm talking about football-wise, because, I mean, there's obviously a lot of work to do, I would imagine, behind the scenes to get everything ready for next season. But football-wise, what impression do you get in terms of what they're going to do this summer to make sure they're ready to at least try and stay up, which has to be the first priority, surely?
Well, I think that's the first priority. Evangelos Marinakis, who I spoke to on Monday after the balcony scenes, was very keen to stress that is not acceptable, just staying up. What he wants to do is challenge far more than that. And he said, in my life, I don't accept compromise. And for him, just finishing 17th and staying up is going to be a compromise. He wants more than that. And he said he's prepared to spend to get more than that. He wants, now he's got Forest in the Premier League, which was kind of objective one. He's got the Academy Category 1 status. That was one of the objectives ticked off. They're still waiting, obviously, for planning permission for the stand, but that's well underway. He's now got Forest into the Premier League. That's another tick. But, that's not it. He can see the potential in Forest. You look at the fans over the weekend and you see that potential in the city. And he wants to harness that. And he seems to be prepared to pay, because he knows he's got to. He knows it's going to cost money to try and compete in the Premier League. And it's one thing. We talk about Sunday's game being that £175 million match, don't we, because you're going to get the TV revenue. But as Mr. Marinakis acknowledged the other day, you need more than that. You've got to spend more than that. You can't just rely on that sort of money if you're not just going to come straight back down again. So he seems very realistic about what it's going to cost, and he seems very prepared to make sure that he can meet that cost, to try and make sure that Forest aren't just there as also rans and trying to cling on to 17th place, but actually do a little bit more than that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that manifests itself in terms of the squad taking shape over the course of the summer, because, as he said, in his words again, we need to sign some players, and it'll be very interesting to see where they pitch. Are they going to go for there, or there in terms of players?
How many do they need?
That's a really good question, to which I don't know the answer.
Because lots of the thought crossed my mind as you were talking about the players that have been linked with moves to Premier League clubs. Had they not got up, your Worrells, Johnson, obviously Spence as well. So if those stories are anywhere near true, surely those three can play in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll want to keep a core of what's won them success this season. But of course, 5 of the players that they've had this season that have been regularly contributing, Max Lowe's been injured for the end of the season, but have been loan players. The interesting one is Jed Spence, who everybody has been writing. Forest knew that if they got any chance of keeping Jed Spence, given the way he's played this season and the fact that he's suddenly become a 15-20 million pound player for Middlesbrough, when they were prepared to show him the door earlier in the season.
Amazing.
Extraordinary how things turn around, isn't it? But he's a player who now Middlesbrough can base a promotion campaign on potentially next season, because they can get the money in for him. But Forest knew, therefore, that to compete with that, they, with that sort of money, they're going to have to get promotion. But now they've got promotion and they can. Now I would think they're very much in that conversation for trying to keep Jed Spence.
Well, it's certainly an option, isn't it? Bearing in mind what you said in your previous answer about how much money Mr. Marinakis is talking about spending.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a possibility.
He didn't actually put figures on it, Mr. Marinakis. No. You wouldn't expect him to. You don't come out and say, well, he's got 50 million pounds to spend. They've been very clever. The recruitment side of the club has been much improved, like everything else pretty much at Forest. Recruitment side has been much improved. They had a really good January, which helped them to promotion. Signed some good players in January. Keenan Davis is another one, loan player who Forest are very keen on. The noises coming out of Aston Villa earlier in the loan spell were that they'd be interested in potentially letting him go. Now Forest have got promotion. The noises seem to be more like, oh no, he's our player. We're going to keep him, because obviously they can see the price tag going up. But I would think he's another one that Forest would look at as a possibility. As I say, Jed Spence, they'd now be in the conversation for. Jimmy Garner is a really interesting one from Manchester United, because I think a lot of people thought that, is he quite good enough for Manchester United's first team yet? That's debatable. But is he too good for another Championship loan? Probably. So what does he need? Maybe a loan to a Premier League side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of these conversations that without promotion Forest wouldn't have been part of, I think they now very much are part of. And that's just for the loan players that they've already had. But I think they will be interested in some of those, because they have been so good. And there clearly is potential. You see the number of Premier League teams that are linked with being interested in those players. You can see they have got potential to play in the top flight. So that, coupled with a back three of McKenna, Cook and Worrell, which has been absolutely outstanding.
How good were they at Wembley?
I mean, did Samba have a save to make?
No.
In the game? I mean, everybody says Forest were maybe a bit fortunate with the penalties, but Huddersfield did nothing to test him, did they?
No.
Because they can't get through. They are so good, those three. And I think they probably will look to bring in another central defender to kind of bolster those three, if you like. Tobias Figueiredo obviously did very well when he came in when Steve Cook got injured, but he's at the end of his contract. I can see him moving on. They'll probably look for another centre half. But I think those three would be quite capable of going and playing in the Premier League. Scott McKenna has been absolutely outstanding this season. I think Ryan Yates can go and play in the top flight, because if ever there was an improved player, there's Ryan Yates. Delighted for him, absolutely thrilled for the season that he's had. And he's proved a lot of people wrong, and I'm really pleased for him. So he can go on. Maybe
I can see on Match of the Day, you mentioned that, the Match of the Day thing. I can see them picking out Ryan Yates two or three times next season in the analysis afterwards. He's the guy that makes them tick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Look at what he does here. Look at where he gets back here. Look, he's on the edge of the opposition's penalty area. Look at how quickly he gets back and wins the ball in a dangerous position for the opposition. So, yeah, all of those sort of things. So when you look through that side, you actually think that, yeah, there's people in there. There's players in there that can cut it in the Premier League. We haven't even mentioned Brennan Johnson, of course. And, you know, apologies to anybody that I haven't got around to. I haven't gone through the entire team, just thinking of players when, you know, as they come to me. But, you know, so they've got a core and they want to keep that core. Now they're in the Premier League, they can have those discussions about some of the lone players who I think they would have lost otherwise. Obviously, they would have lost Brennan Johnson. I say obviously, surely they would have lost Brennan Johnson and probably Joe Worrell as well if they hadn't gone up. They now keep those, assuming they want to stay, and I'm pretty sure they want to stay and play for Forest in the Premier League. Those are the noises that are coming out anyway. And then it's a question of, as I say, where are they going to be shopping? At what level are they going to be shopping? Are they bargain basement? Are they somewhere in the middle, or are they really going to push the boat out and sign some world stars? And that's going to be very interesting to see. But certainly the ambition is there from the club to be not just hangers on, and to try and make an impact in the Premier League. Because I think, having seen the potential of what the fans and the city and the team can deliver, get the impression that Evangelos Marinakis is quite excited about the potential of what he can do now he's got a Premier League football team.
There's much more to come from Colin Fray in a moment when he talks about the future and what the future in the Premier League looks like. I need to thank my gold members of Chippers Club for their continued support of the channel. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to sign up. Also, a new way of contributing via YouTube as well. If you're enjoying the channel and you like the videos that I do, if you click the dollar button below, that'll take you to Super Thanks, and you can make a one-off donation to help the channel going forward. But my gold members of Chippers Club this week are William Hutton, Nick Hempel, Ant Adam, Damien Miles, Christian Tonnies, James Sorden, Henny the Hero, Tiny Media, Philip Sheldon, Paul Harrison, Thomas Newton, Mark German, Alan Francis, David Shelton, Mark Davis, Ez Chowdhury, Paul Metcalf, Tim Hayward, Richard Waterhouse and Ian Russell. As I say, the link to join up is in the description below. Let's get back to Colin Fray.
What about signing players with Premier League experience? Because when you go through the side, it's obviously quite a young side, and not that many have got years and years of Premier League experience. Probably off the top of my head, maybe just Steve Cook. So do you think they will need players who've kind of been there a little bit in the Premier League?
Yeah, again, it's going to be interesting to see how they approach that, isn't it? Whether or not they do go for sort of seasoned Premier League professionals who they can, you know, maybe pick up on free transfers from other clubs if they're in a contract, or you know, I mean, straight away. I mean, every morning you're seeing Forest linked with just about every footballer there is.
Oh, really? Okay.
But one of them is, you know, who I've seen is Jamal Lascelles from Newcastle, and kind of think that, you know, that might make a little bit of sense, because obviously he's got his Nottingham background, his Forest connections, he's got Premier League experience now. Mentioned earlier, they probably will want to sign another centre half to bolster the three of the red brick wall at the back. But you know, so you see a story like that, and you think, well, you know, I can see some sense in that. It might still just be journalists who have thought the same thing and thought, yeah, I can see some sense in that, so I'll write it. So you know, we're going to wait to see. But that kind of player, again, I don't want to be disrespectful to Jamal Lascelles in any way, but it depends where they're pitching, doesn't it? At what level they're looking for. You know, are they looking for that kind of still fairly young player, English player, Nottingham background, with experience in the Premier League, but not international level? Or are they looking higher up than that? Are they looking at international level players who they can bring in, who aren't necessarily English internationals, but, you know, from other countries? Or are they looking even higher than that, and they're looking at, you know, £50 million players? We're just going to have to wait and see, because at the moment nobody knows the answer to that. But
yeah,
It's just amazing. I see your reaction there. It's amazing that we're having this conversation, isn't it? That this is, Forest seem to have an owner now who, now they've got themselves into the Premier League, as I said earlier, does seem to be determined to make an impression.
Well, he can now, can't he? This is what you and I banged on about it for years, that Forest were doing it the right way by selling a player basically every summer to keep them within FFP, while other clubs, maybe not too far away, have not done that and have ultimately, to be fair, paid the price for doing that. But Forest have kind of bided their time, and now they are up. They don't have to worry about that so much.
No, they don't. And a lot of clubs have gambled, but they've won the gamble. If they had they lost a playoff final, or had they not got promoted, they might well have found themselves in trouble FFP wise, but they won the gamble and got themselves up, and now they're up there. And I just think for Evangelos Marinakis, he's got his Olympiakos side, which he's had for years and years and years, and huge in Greece. But with all due respect, the Greek Super League does not have the profile that the English Premier League has. No. And he's now, Evangelos Marinakis, got a club in that league, and I think he's pretty much determined to take advantage of that and try and make a real impact, not just as I say, not just survive in there, but make a real impact. So we don't know how big his pockets are, do we? We don't know how much money he's going to spend, but I do think I think they'll do it well. I think they'll do it sensibly. I think they'll look at character as much as player, character as much as quality. I think they'll be pretty careful not to upset what is a fantastic camaraderie. Excuse me, that they've got in the current squad. They are very, very together. We keep hearing that word, together, both within the squad and in terms of the supporters as well. But within the squad, they've got a group of players who are prepared to work hard for each other, work hard for Steve Cooper, work hard for the club. And I think they'll be very keen that whoever they get in will fit in, and the worst thing really is you go out and you splash loads of money on a player who has got no interest really in kind of fitting in with the rest of the club and fitting in with the ethos and stuff like that, and ends up being the odd man out. And we
saw Fulham do it, didn't we? They spent, I don't know, 100 million pounds the other season and came straight back down because they not spent it wisely.
Yeah, you can waste it. And I think, there is faith now in the recruitment team that they've got at the club. There's faith in Dave Murphy, clearly. And the last couple of transfer windows, January especially, January is the best January for ages, because
that's not saying a lot.
No, it doesn't say a lot, to be fair. You're absolutely right.
With all due respect to Nuno da Costa.
but Adama Diakabi. But they not only the players they brought in, but getting the business done early as well. That was impressive, to get Steve Cook early on. Keenan Davis signed on January the 1st, I think it was, as soon as the window opened. So they got good players in, and they got them in early. But then also had the presence of mind at the end of January to react to Lewis Grabban's injury and go and sign Sam Surridge, and what a signing he's proved to be. So you look at that sort of recruitment and you think, look, we lost Lewis Grabban one day. The next day, we'd identified somebody who's going to come in, fit in, work with the ethos, and score us some goals and help to get us promoted. Bang, did it within, in 24 hours they did that. So you kind of that sort of thing gives you real faith, I think, in the recruitment setup. But it's all an unknown. It's a fantastic journey that Forest are going to go on now. It's been a long journey, and it hasn't always been fantastic. It hasn't often been fantastic.
It hasn't ever been fantastic. That's not true.
But now they're there.
Yeah,
this is going to be really interesting to watch how it develops, because, as I say, I think you've got people there who are good at what they do, and you've got an owner there, the money man, who is prepared to invest, and you've got a city which has proved over the last 3 or 4 days how passionate it is for success and for the football club. You've got a great head coach in there. You've got a great nucleus of a squad. Now can you grow it to be able to make some sort of challenge in that top flight? It's going to be fantastic to watch. It's going to be great to watch.
The other thing I should point out as your Sydney correspondent is that the thing you don't necessarily appreciate, perhaps until you go on holiday around the world, or in my case, live on the other side of the world, is the international side of it. And the fact that where I am, I can now watch every Forest game this season on the television. And, you know, and have been able to since I've been here, you know, every Premier League game is shown over here, as it is in Malaysia and Singapore and maybe not China, but, you know, all around the world is the point I'm making, which also brings great opportunities, doesn't it, to spread the brand, if you like, spread the name of Forest, as it would have been in the late 70s and early 80s, to do it all over again.
Yeah, and even more so now, because in the late 70s and early 80s, you didn't have all that.
No.
You know, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I can't remember ever seeing much of anything about the English First Division as it was then going abroad. Mm-hmm. You know, because we weren't so linked up then, were we? We weren't so joined up in terms of media and communications and everything that's available to us now, and social media, as I say, as well. It's all new from Forest, even from the last time they were in the Premier League. You know, that's developed. Never mind going back to the 70s and 80s, even back to the late 90s when they were in the Premier League last. You still didn't really have that, I wouldn't say global, maybe in Europe a little bit then, because you started to get European players coming across, hadn't you? Forest with Brian Roy, Pierre Van Hooijdonk, those kind of players. But I still don't see it was really global then, the Premier League. But obviously, as you've just said, it is now. It's huge everywhere, and of course, then you kind of come back to our line of work and the kind of what are they going to do with the media facilities at the City Ground and stuff like that. Because as soon as you get, Son coming in for Tottenham, you get a load of Korean journalists who want to come and report on Son playing for Tottenham, and it's just players from all over the world are followed by journalists from all over the world, and they all want to get into every game to watch that player, to report specifically on that player. And that's something that Forest are going to have to get used to pretty quickly, I think. The difference between a pre-match press conference. I mean, the guys who we work with, you used to work with, and I work with still at East Midlands today. They contrast a Forest or a Derby press conference before a match with a Leicester one, and all the rights holders for TV that turn up and all have their own interviews in a press conference. A Forest pre-match press conference for a Tuesday night game at home to Barnsley or something is me, Sarah Clapson from the Post, and Paul Taylor from the Athletic. Normally, that's it. for a game in the Championship, Premier League, hugely different, hugely different. With possibly 60, 70 journalists wanting to get onto a pre-match press conference, never mind actually get into the game. All of those kind of things, just from our side of the table, really, are kind of, they're blowing my mind, and I don't even have to sort it out. I mean, I don't know what they're going to cope with it all at Forest, but as I say, it's all going to be an exciting adventure, I think, over the course of the next few months.
It's going to be great. I'm so happy you got to go to Wembley, and it turned out.
Yeah,
it did as well. It would have been a bit of a damp squib had it. I mean, you've been to Wembley. We covered Carl Froch against George Groves there, and that obviously had a memorable ending as well. Not that George Groves can remember it, but anyway, and this has had a memorable ending as well. It's good that you've had that moment and enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, the whole day was fantastic. I mean, it really was, and I've had so many lovely comments and stuff over the course of the last week or so, and just as I've said in various interviews, thank you to everybody who's made some of those nice comments. It was lovely to meet so many people on Wembley Way. Wembley Way was just red. You could hardly see any Huddersfield. I don't know where all the Huddersfield fans were, but Wembley Way was just a sea of red from early in the day till pretty much, well, the time we went into the ground anyway. And then after I'd gone into the ground, I still saw pictures of just a sea of red coming down from the tube station on Wembley Way. And it was lovely to meet so many people and have lots of pictures taken and everything. That whole part of the day was fantastic. Then the game itself, obviously, and as I mentioned earlier, that atmosphere inside the ground, the celebrations, the heading down into the bowels of Wembley and, you know, seeing all that side of it and the media's, the mixed zone and getting the interviews afterwards and stuff. Just a fantastic day, a fantastic experience. It will be an awful place to lose a game. Mansfield obviously suffered it the day before. You know, they had exactly the opposite experience, really. Mansfield, from the time the game kicked off anyway. I'm sure they had some nice times on Wembley Way beforehand, but for Mansfield fans, as soon as the game kicked off, then Wembley became a bit of a horror story, didn't it? And it's not a nice place to lose, but it's a terrific place to win. And people were asking me during the, you know, when it became clear that Forest were going to be challenging, people were sort of saying, would you take automatic promotion, or if you could guarantee winning at Wembley, would you go for playoffs rather than automatic promotion? And the answer is yes, if you can guarantee it.
Yes.
Because
yes.
You know, it is absolutely the place to win and go up and, you know, get the trophy and all the rest of it, which if you finish second, you know, you might be in your own ground, you might be away from home, you might only have 3,000 of your own supporters or 2,000 or whatever it is. If you're away from home, if you finish second, you go up, and to a certain extent, even if you finish first, but then at least you get the Champions Trophy to be presented at your next home game. But it's just nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. I've waited a long time, and I'd like more now, please. Am I being greedy? Please don't make me wait another 30 years.
Yeah.
My thanks to Colin Fray for his time in a busy week. If you want to hear from one of his predecessors, my interview with Martin Fisher is here, or you might want to hear from David Johnson, father of Brennan. His story of his time at Nottingham Forest is here.